Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feeling Lighter podcast. I'm Coach Tyler here today with Dr. Lisa. How are you?
Hello. I'm wonderful. How are
I
you?
love your crystal necklace. I just noticed that crystal necklace
It's
on you.
clear quartz.
It's very cool. I
Thank
like it when
you.
people get like a chunky crystal on their body. You know? That's awesome.
Thank
It's
you.
bringing you something positive. We know
It
that for sure.
is.
Well, speaking of things that are positive, today we are going to talk about something that's really important and something that frankly has been neglected for decades and decades, which is women's hormonal health
Yeah.
and subjects around menopause and perimenopause, because let's get real, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a big need for women to understand what's actually happening inside their bodies so they don't have to live their lives feeling horrible. They can actually feel good again. So I always like to start with a little social media post. And this one's a little different. Sometimes I slide into the deep end, but this one was a post. And it's an air traffic controller swinging their arms. And it says, all the health practitioners on social media trying to help their clients navigate the insane recommendations from wellness influencers. Erin, welcome to the show. And can you start out by telling us just how insane this landscape is when it comes to the advice that people are being given regarding their health?
I feel bummed that I didn't wear a chunky crystal. Let me just start there because I have plenty.
I was going to say, I'm sure you got some crystals in the background somewhere. So.
I want to start off this conversation by saying this is never to speak down on anybody. I genuinely believe if somebody's on social media trying to share their health journey, they're probably doing it with good intentions.
Sure.
I like to think about humanity as good. And so I actually got some flack for that post because it was like a lot of people came to the comment section to be like, you're talking down on other practitioners. I'm like, I'm literally not. But I am saying that we have to be super mindful of where we get our health information from. And I think now the vast majority of people are getting the vast majority of their health education from social media. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but we just want to be super mindful of where it's coming from. And there's a difference between a wellness influencer and a healthcare practitioner that happens to be on social media and is educating on social media. And the chief and primary difference in my eyes is that wellness influencers are talking about their own lived experience, which isn't problematic in and of itself. It's just that they don't necessarily have the understanding to step back and say, just because this worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for all bodies. Whereas it's more of like an N equals one. Whereas a practitioner who has worked with tens or hundreds or thousands of other bodies understands that what is good for the goose is not always good for the gander, and we might need to widen the scope of what's appropriate for everybody.
I'm so glad you said that. As a healthcare practitioner who just happens to be on social media, that's the best way to put it without it sounding, judgy or mean or rude. But that is the reality. A lot of people are influencers because they are going off of their singular experience, and now they think that they can just, it's like when someone, loses weight and they're like, oh, I can tell you how to lose weight. It's like, no, you can't. Just because something worked for you in this short period of time doesn't mean it's applicable to everyone. So I appreciate you for saying that. And that's a great segue into sort of introducing yourself and sort of what your background is and how you got into this work before we dig into all the details.
Sure. So I'm a nutritionist by trade. I actually went to school for nutrition and dietetics because I was really in a battle, a very long, decade-plus long battle with eating disorders. It started in my adolescence and traversed into my early 20s. And I just thought, okay, if I go to school for diet, I can fix myself. I was very much so looking at myself and my body as a problem that needed to be fixed. Right. And so I was also a little bit of a health nut, but I'm born in 1984. So health to me was just getting skinny. That's Absolutely. What we were taught as women back then. So every day I kept looking at the world of health through the lens of like, will it make me skinny or not? So I went to school to try to fix myself, and spoiler alert, it didn't work. So once I graduated dietetic school, I started to expand my education into more alternative health. So for me, that looked like meditation, that looked like studying energy medicine. I started practicing yoga, I became a health coach, and through those more alternative modalities, I started to heal my body, I started to heal different aspects of my body, and the eating disorder went into remission. So I was like living my best life. I was teaching yoga. I had my nutrition practice. I met my husband, bought a house, had a baby, like living the dream. And then pretty soon after I had my baby, I got really, really sick. So I went to my doctors for a year. I went to my healthcare providers and they were like, sorry, like you're just a new mom. It's kind of how it goes. I think collectively we're pretty okay with women and moms feeling like trash. We're like, yeah, you just gotta suck it up. And so I was pretty overlooked. I felt really gaslit in a lot of situations. And this went on for a year. I learned how to advocate for myself and how to really be a bulldog and a champion for myself. And through that, I ended up getting diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, like a kind of a gnarly one. And conventional medicine doesn't really have a whole lot of solutions for autoimmunity. It's like a little bit of a question mark. It's like the shrug emoji. We're like, oh, it's weird. Your body's attacking itself. We don't really know what to do. And I wasn't cool at that point in my life. I was 30. I was a new mom with just being on medication. This is not to medication shame. I'm so grateful that we have it when we need it. It just didn't feel like the right choice for me. I wanted to understand why my immune system was acting so foolishly. I wanted to know why that was going on. So that's what led me to find functional medicine and more of a root cause approach to health and healing. And that really snowballed into what my career is today. So I'm a nutritionist by trade. I practice functional nutrition and functional medicine, and I will stop talking now.
No, that was great. I appreciate the attention to detail in that, and then the that lived experience, I think, is the important piece. Like the combination of working in your field, in your profession, doing the things, and then experiencing something and having to dig deeper because we don't necessarily have the framework for what's happening in your body. And I'm sorry that you had that experience, but also, glad that it brought you to this place. I think that is sort of a great place to get into this conversation around perimenopause, menopause. I'm 43. I'm 43.
Don't look at me.
I always forget. I'm 43. I'll be 44 this year. I keep trying to push it up. But I don't understand perimenopause. I don't really have a great grasp on menopause, and I know that it's because it's very much understudied. I totally agree with you. I think our society is very comfortable with women, with moms just feeling awful and kind of saying, this is your cross to bear. Like you're a mom, you're a woman. Sorry, So understanding, what menopause really is, what's happening in menopause, what's happening with perimenopause, I think is vital to us having a better grasp on our health as we age as women. So you kind of go wherever you want with that. But I have so much to learn about this topic, so I'm just all ears.
Let me ask you questions. I'm 41. So we're similar here. Are you getting inundated with perimenopause stuff on social media right now?
100%.
Okay. Are you
100%.
like, because to the point where I'm like, I was feeling really good, and I'm in this. This is like the work that I do. We work with women, we work with hormones, and I'm like, do I have it? Do I have the perimenopause? Because it's like the
exactly
message
how
is.
I feel. I'm like, wait, what?
Wait, I didn't know.
Thought my knee was just hurting because I slept wrong. Wait, is this perimenopause? That is exactly how I feel. It's the topic of conversation with me and all my girlfriends right now. We're on Marco Polo, and my friend's like, yeah, girl, it's the perimenopause because I can't think. And I'm like, do I have it? That is 100%. It's everywhere. It keeps coming at me. And I'm not even like reading all of it, but it's still come. The algorithm is sending me everything perimenopause. So 100%.
Okay, all right. So same. And I want to talk. I want to position this conversation as I do think that is a positive. For a very, very, very long time, we did not talk about it. It was like in the closet. Nobody was allowed to talk about it. And we didn't have even language or understanding to put to it. Women's hormones are just like a question mark. Yeah. Just like so much with women's bodies. Like, oh, it's crazy. They change all the time. And it is harder to study. I will say that when we have these biochemical things happening and they're changing throughout the month and throughout our lifespan. So I do think the fact that we're centering this conversation is a positive. My concern is that we are centering it so much, perimenopause, menopause, and then with that comes the HRT, hormone replacement therapy discussion as well. And if we are positioning that as the epicenter of the women's health discussion, we run the risk of overlooking some of the basics, some of the foundations, and some other root causes. So perimenopause symptoms are pretty vast. And it's anything from fatigue to heart palpitations to hair and skin changes. We can see night sweats and hot flashes, but it's a pretty wide spectrum of symptoms. There are other things that can contribute to those symptoms. So what I'm seeing now is women in their late 30s, early 40s who are saying, oh, I have these symptoms. I'm pretty sure it's perimenopause. We want to still do a deeper dive. We want to always, even in perimenopause and menopause, take a 360-degree approach to health. So we're not just saying, oh, it's perimenopause, you're 40, stuff is hitting the fan. You got to do HRT, problem solved, because it's usually not as simple and straightforward as that. So I think that that's a good segue into the conversation. But perimenopause is real, and menopause is real, and God willing, we will all go through this big, huge endocrine transition at some point in our life. Perimenopause is a transition period, and it can span a few months up to 10 years. So imagine a decade of your life being in that symptomatic transition period. Women are suffering, and we want to make sure that we pay attention to women, pay attention to their lived experience, and have ways to alleviate that suffering. Are you guys familiar with the Women's Health Initiative?
No.
Okay, so it's a big study with a lot of different women. And what came out in 2002 was that estrogen replacement therapy essentially causes breast cancer. So this was the news that was reported. Yeah,
I do
from this study, and it was pretty global, widespread. So a lot of women were pulled off estrogen replacement therapy, or they just lost access to it through this perimenopause and menopause transition. And 20 years later, we're looking back and saying, big yikes. That was a big whoopsie on our part, because we just misunderstood the data. And now what we're understanding is that estrogen actually doesn't cause breast cancer. It can actually reduce our likelihood of getting breast cancer and all-cause mortality. So estrogen is really, really important. And there's a whole generation of women that lost access to this hormone, and we're seeing the downstream negative side effects of that. So again, when I have this conversation, I am not anti-HRT. I am pro women getting the support and the resources that they need, but HRT isn't a magic bullet, and a lot of the messaging that we're receiving right now is just go on HRT and you'll be fine. What perimenopause is this, like I said, this transition. And typically what's happening hormonally is that progesterone starts to drop. So that's usually the first thing that happens in this transition period. We can see low progesterone even outside of perimenopause. It's a pretty common hormone imbalance. Progesterone is one of our feel-good chemicals. It helps us sleep. It helps our mood. It's anti-anxiety. It has a very calming effect. And it also helps to buffer the effects of estrogen. So we want our estrogen and our progesterone in nice, it's like a yin and yang situation. We want it in nice, healthy balance. What is also happening as we trend toward menopause is that estrogen goes up and down. So I've heard it described as estrogen is on a roller coaster. So we can have high highs and low lows, and eventually over time it declines and our ovaries stop producing estrogen. So without the progesterone to buffer that, we can have these wild hormonal swings that cause pretty wild hormonal symptoms. And that is really what's happening on a hormonal level during perimenopause.
Thanks for being so clear about all this.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to touch on is the importance of functional diagnostics, because as you've said here, when there's so much information out there and it all leans kind of a particular direction, for these hormone replacement therapy solutions, you might be saying to yourself, I need to go take some progesterone or estrogen or something like that, when really maybe there's an underlying infection in your body instead, or something else that might be causing this, right? So can you speak to the importance of using functional diagnostics in order to make sure that A, we're picking the lowest hanging fruit and making sure that that's addressed first, and then B, we're actually hopefully finding the right path for our individual bodies?
Yeah, such a really great question. I'm going to use a real world client example to illustrate this point. So we had somebody come to our practice and she had lost her period for 6 months. And she had night sweats and just a lot of hormonal symptoms. And so she's like, I think I'm in perimenopause. Instagram told me I'm in it. So like, help me.
Must be.
Right.
It's gonna be it. And there's no, to be clear, there's no one test for perimenopause. There's no one test to be like, yep, you're in it all right. So we have to kind of use context clues and symptoms and then also process of elimination for other things. And so she came to us and she had COVID and had a lot of GI symptoms after COVID and was put on antibiotics at one point. And so there was just a lot going on. And so we ran certain lab tests on her. One thing we looked at was her thyroid. Thyroid gets pretty often overlooked in the whole hormone conversation. We want to talk about progesterone and estrogen and testosterone, but like the thyroid's a kind of a big deal. So we looked at her thyroid. She had Hashimoto's, but she was in remission. So we had, she had low antibodies originally. So we had, she was in remission. And so we retested her thyroid. We looked at her gut as well, and we looked at hormones, sex hormones and adrenal hormones. Her thyroid antibodies were so much higher than they were. They had been like under 30, and they were up 400 plus. So her thyroid antibodies had skyrocketed. So what is that telling us? That's telling us that her immune system is dysregulated. And so we also looked at her gut. She had a lot of significant overgrowths and some significant undergrowths. So the good bacteria was really suppressed, most likely due to the antibiotic use, and then the opportunists, like the gnarly guys, were overgrown. And so that was most likely contributing to her immune dysregulation, which was then contributing to her Hashimoto's coming out of remission, which was then contributing to her thyroid hormones being all wonky. That is what was contributing to the loss of cycle and the hot flashes. So and so it would have been so easy to just be like, oh yeah, perimenopause, you're of age, these symptoms track, totally, like maybe you should go to a hormone clinic and get on some HRT. But what she really needed was gut support, immune stabilization to stabilize the Hashimoto's, the autoimmunities. Once we did that, her period came back, the symptoms went away, and she felt great. So I'm a huge, huge, huge advocate and fan for doing the right testing based on the individual.
I love that. What if somebody doesn't have the resources to work with a practitioner? Where would you recommend they start? Is there things that they can do in their daily life to attempt to, clean up their stress, maybe try eliminating foods that might be potentially inflammatory for their body, getting better night's sleep? Like, what else would you recommend that people could try to see if it just improves them without having to do some functional diagnostics?
Yeah, the basics, we always want to start there. You don't need a $400 stool test to for somebody to eat more broccoli. So we always want to start with the basics. Blood sugar regulation is crucial because that becomes a lot more challenging for women as our estrogen levels drop. That becomes more challenging for us to manage. So blood sugar regulation, because low blood sugar, high blood sugar, or any swings in between can contribute to inflammation, can contribute to hormone dysregulation. It's a pretty wild stressor to the body. So eating in a way to regulate your blood sugar looks like not skipping meals. Fasting, really not great for female physiology. I've been saying it for years. I think we have like a sea change. Like when I first started, it was a lot of intermittent fasting for women, and now I see less of that. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So no skipping meals, eating balanced meals, eating an appropriate amount of calories for your physiology is really important. So we're always.
When I hear you say that, I think sometimes people don't realize you're saying enough calories, and a lot of women are eating far too few.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to knock on that door right now?
We always want to knock on that door. Always.
Your hormones, if we're going to stick with the hormone conversation, your hormones love abundance. They do not like lack. Any lack signal is going to tell the brain, we have a problem. So lack of calories, lack of body fat, lack of appropriate fuel, under eating, chronic dieting, overtraining. All of these are signals to your brain that like, we might not be in like a safe zone here. And so that's going to down regulate hormone production, thyroid production, your sex hormones. It's going to put us in a less fertile place because your brain and your body just don't feel safe enough to ovulate. We were talking about progesterone earlier, that like really feel good hormone. The only way we produce progesterone is through ovulation. So if we're not ovulating, we're not producing heaps of progesterone. How do we ovulate? Our brain has to feel really, really safe in order to do that. So we always need to put in safety inputs to our mind, to our brain, and to our body. And appropriate fuel is one of those huge safety signals for women.
This is so big because I'm seeing this like downward spiral that the industry, the diet industry, the fitness industry has created. It's like skinny means healthy. So eat less calories so you lose weight, but you're really losing muscle mass along with it. So your blood sugar's less sensitive. You're less able to regulate it. And then everything just goes downhill from there. Your hormones are crashed and you just end up in this pit of like, I tried to do everything right, but here I am, my hormones are trashed. I don't have any muscle mass to help support my metabolism and my blood sugar regulation. Like, so when somebody's like all the way falling apart, like how do we build them back up? And I also wanted to give you space to give us more of those free ways for people to get started too. I cut you off there. So
yeah, I sometimes I always, when I'm working with people, I think because of my background with disordered eating or my own experience with disordered eating, I'm very sensitive to this. And sometimes we have to have a pretty frank and honest conversation. What is your primary health goal? Because sometimes health goals can be in conflict with weight loss goals. And I am never going to compromise somebody's health just to get them to a certain body aesthetic. I'm just not that practitioner. It's not to say that people are wrong or invalid. Look, I'm baked into the same culture that everybody else is. Like heroin chic is back. You know, like the Kate Moss of the 90s is back. So I'm like, oh no, as long as jeans don't drop to like below the butt crack, like I think I can keep myself together. But like if that starts happening, like I gotta go. So that's an important discussion that I have with folks. And we can bring somebody back to homeostasis and to like inputting those safety signals. But sometimes that might look like gaining weight for a little bit. Sometimes that might look at staying at the current weight. And so that just is an honest conversation that has to come online, I think.
No, that's important. That's really important to say. I work as a physical therapist and a body image coach and just a general health and movement coach. And sometimes people are like, I really want to lose weight. And I'm like, you know what? I respect that. I respect your autonomy. I get it. This world is much kinder the smaller you are, 100%. But I'm not the coach for that because I can't ethically. I have my own history with, over-exercising, under-eating, and I know how bad it is for our long-term health, our cardiovascular system. And so I just can't engage in the conversation or the effort in helping you actualize a smaller body. And I also understand that intentional weight loss is like 98% unsuccessful. So what we're working toward may not even happen and will probably hurt you more than it will help you. So, full respect to people seeking their own goals and doing whatever they think is best for their health. But I'm definitely not the coach, for you in that regard. But what it sounds like you're saying is, this focus, it's almost like those two things really can't coexist when you're trying to stabilize and normalize your hormones and manage through menopause and perimenopause. This, significant focus and interest in weight loss is almost going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to do. Is that kind of what you're saying, with your work with clients?
I think it really depends on the situation and really depends on the individual. I'm not really a fan of blanket statements because they don't always hold up for everybody. We're so unique. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes somebody will come and they'll be like, I've gained weight. I have no idea why this doesn't make sense. They have no history of restriction or disordered eating patterns. And they're like, I'm just like, this is not my body. What's going on? And then there's real physiological rationale and reasons.
Right.
It might be like, toxic mold exposure or certain gut bacteria. There can be real things going on once we look under the hood to say like, yeah, you were right. This was your body communicating with you. Good job for listening. Yeah. And we're going to figure out what's happening here. So it really is it's so dependent on the person.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think the focus, though, that you said was really powerful. What's your priority here? Right? If your priority is to be skinny, then you're going to make different decisions than if your priority is to feel as healthy and as vibrant as possible. And so to me, it's like, how do we get more and more people focused around how do I feel, right? How do I improve how I feel in my body and about myself along the way? And then let the cards fall how they fall at the end of the day, because it's something that we can actually have a lot more control over in the long run. And the other way just keeps us stuck in cycles of shame and guilt and self-judgment for not achieving some standard that most people's bodies probably don't even like.
Yeah, I think that's an easy thing to say, and it's a lot less easy to live out.
For sure. We know. We know.
Trying every
we got
day here.
thousands of members that we're helping work through that mental process, so we get it.
That is the worst.
Yes, we do at the end of the day live in a world that tells us our value is in our pant size. So it's it's a little bit of climbing an uphill battle some days, I think. But yes. And also, as a practitioner, it's really not my job to tell somebody what their priority is. Like, that's not up to me. That my work at the end of the day is always leading people back to themselves. I believe that our relationship with ourselves is the biggest, most important relationship that we have in our life. A lot of us, I will say women, have divorced ourselves from our bodies. We were taught that at a very young age. Maybe something happened to our bodies where it no longer felt like a safe space, or we just received a messaging that your body is wrong, this is not correct, your body's kind of yucky, there's parts of it that you should hide and feel shame about. And so a lot of us do learn to divorce ourselves. And so coming back in contact with our body, getting back in touch with ourselves can be a long process. And so, everybody's at a different point in their own journey. And so it's important that we meet people where they're at, which I know is exactly the work that you are all doing.
Yeah, that's
100%.
big. Let's continue the conversation into, things that people can do to help improve their circumstances, maybe without functional medicine and, diagnostics and whatnot. And then we could go into maybe a little bit more of the actual diagnostics if somebody doesn't feel like they're able to improve their outcomes on their own.
Okay, great. So this is going to, that transition that we started off with the perimenopause into menopause can be like real rickety and rockety. It can feel really bad. Certain factors can affect how rough that transition is. And so these are some of like the foundations and the basics that we talked about, blood sugar being one of them. But everything I'm going to outline is, even if you're not in that phase or you're on the other side of your post-menopause, all of this still works. All of the basics always apply. So the blood sugar regulation is one. You touched upon sleep, so crucial. That can be a little tough to come by if you're having those night sweats and the hot flashes. Sleep is crucial. I as somebody who was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and works with a lot of autoimmunity, the one thing I will say is that there is no supplement that can match what sleep can do for your immune system. So I'm really encouraging people to get a lot of sleep. Variety in the diet. I've been saying this a lot lately. It's so weird, but I drive by this place. I think it's a church, but I don't know. It's like a farmer's market sign, but I think it's a church, and it says abundant harvest. And I'm like, that is the best way to describe how we should be eating, an abundant harvest. So lots of variety. And I'm talking about plant variety. We can do animal variety too. I don't believe that everybody has to be plant-based. Like, I'm not somebody that subscribes to that. I was a vegetarian and vegan for 20 years, and now I eat a lot of animal protein because it makes me feel better. But regardless, we should be focusing on a lot of plant variety because that is going to feed the beneficial species in our gut, bacteria, which helps to set the pace of our entire immune system. It's also really supportive of mitochondrial function, which gives us energy. It's really supportive of our liver health and detoxification. So the way to kind of think about it is I put it into 3 categories, and this is actually from Dr. Terry Walls, but 3 different categories. This helps me wrap my head around it. I think this is a great takeaway. One is green leafy vegetables. This is going to be like your Swiss chard and your spinach and your kale. The other one is highly pigmented fruits and veggies. So anything, if you cut it through the center, it's going to be the same color on the inside as the outside, like a carrot or a peach or butternut squash or a strawberry. And then the third is sulfur-rich veggies. So these are your cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, bok choy, but also onions, garlics, leeks, and shallots. So if you're getting something from one of those categories every day, you can shoot for 1 cup from each category. I think that is a really great way to get a high variety diet. And that's just going to help your entire body from tip to tail. Focusing on digestion and digestive health is really, really important. Chewing your food, slowing down, not eating on the go. We do a lot of gut testing, and a lot of people have low stomach acid, low digestive enzymes. So they're not actually, even if they're eating a super healthy diet, they're not accessing the nutrition from their super healthy diet because they don't have the right stuff to break down those nutrients. And one of the best things you can do without a supplement is to just slow down and chew your food. If you're eating when you're in like a survival mode, fight or flight response, you're just not going to access the nutrition from your food.
I just want to say I love that you're saying this right now, because I remember reading a book like 20 or 25 years ago that talked about the importance of chewing your food and how the saliva mixes with it to help the process of digestion, and the smaller particles are digested more easily. And it's those things that, like, we don't have to say you got to be this or you got to do that or you got to eat this or you got to do that. It's just like chomp your mouth more and go a little slower, and all of a sudden, you know, things feel better in your body when you do that. And so I just love advice like that. It's
well,
so
it's
great.
like people are like, wellness is so expensive. And like, totally, I'm not disagreeing with that. You know, we run functional labs. They're pricey. People are paying out of pocket for them. But like, are you breathing? You know, like, are you, you breathe? Do you like,
do you chew? Do you sleep? Do you breathe? That's
right. There's like
the
free wellness that is available to us. It's just not like sexy, glamorous, Instagram worthy content for the most part, but it's the real needle movers. Chewing your food, it sends the signal to the rest of your body like, hey, food is coming, get ready. And so our digestive juices start pumping out, and now we can access our protein, we can access nutrients in our food. It's a really great thing. We're less likely to have food sensitivities if we're breaking down our food. So yeah, chew your food.
Awesome. Talk to us about the benefits of movement when it comes to managing a lot of these symptoms.
So you said something earlier about muscle, and muscle's getting like a real time in the sun right now, which is awesome, particularly for women and women's health. And there's like, you know, for so long we were taught to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And now there's a lot of people saying like, you actually have to like put on some muscle mass for health. So one thing that muscle does, I've heard it referred to as a metabolic buffer. So it really helps with blood sugar control. It helps with insulin resistance. I do believe that we should be, especially as women in their 30s and 40s, should be attempting to put on some muscle mass, or at least maintain what they already have. And so that's something that's just like a little bit of an aside, but moving your body is so clutch. It helps with lymph flow. It helps with circulation. Going for a walk. I'm a huge advocate for walking outdoors. I actually just saw something on Instagram that's like, walking doesn't count as exercise. And I was like,
we get really angry around here
like,
when we hear stuff like that. All movement counts. Like all movement matters.
Are you just trying to get
ridiculous.
like clickbait? What's happening here?
Yeah.
Walking outdoors, it's really good for your brain health. It's good for your mood. It is good for, like I said, lymph flow and circulation. Walking after a meal, even just like 10 minutes, can really help to bring down blood glucose levels. So if you do tend towards higher blood sugar, insulin resistance, it's a really, really effective strategy, walking after a big meal.
I love that. You know, you've mentioned blending a lot of other things in with your practice, and that's something that I think is really interesting, because I have worked with functional health practitioners and physical therapists and spiritual coaches and mindset coaches, and you name it, I've probably tried it, right? But when we're able to integrate those things together is when we're able to see the fruits of all those things interacting with each other. So tell us about your journey into things outside of what most people are talking about, which is usually just like, what are you eating and what's your exercise routine look like? How is that benefiting people in terms of helping them live a healthier and happier life?
It's just like widening the scope. So we do have our physical bodies, and we don't want to overlook those. They're really important, but we have to understand that there's our mental body, our emotional body, our energetic or our spiritual body, and all of these play into overall health. I think that's sometimes missed in the conversation. For me, healing both disordered eating and also autoimmunity, getting that into remission, required that I think outside the box and I stop just fixating on my physical body. So I really bring that into my practice as much as I can. Functional medicine, as much as I love it, it is not always the panacea that it's made out to be. I think there's a real issue in functional medicine with what I call templated medicine or cookie cutter approach, where somebody walks into the office and they run the same 5 to 8 labs. So somebody's spending like $5,000 in lab testing up front before they've ever had a conversation with somebody, and then they're just getting this templated protocol. So they're walking out with like 15 supplements, and I'm like, well, that's not really root cause. So we really have to cater it to the individual. I always listen to the human being behind the lab testing. I want to hear their story. I want to hear their journey. I'm less interested in the data that's on a lab test, and I'm more interested about what that data is communicating to me about the lived experience of the human being behind the data. That's just so important, and everything we do is really catered to the individual, and I think that is just missing in healthcare quite a bit, and I think it's so crucial. I just recorded a podcast. I'm like trying to think about how much I wanted to say. I was just thinking about this and talking about this because I talk to a lot of highly ambitious women. And so there's this idea that our ambition can burn us out. And yes, totally. It totally can. If we are running and gunning and we're not resting and we're pushing ourselves past our capacity, that is a recipe for burnout and hormone depletion. And there are there's like a certain hormonal pattern that I see with highly ambitious women. And so I recently ran my own labs and I'm like, okay, the body's telling me some things. It's given me some clues. Might not be perimenopause, but it is a little bit of a burnout picture potentially. So what's going on? And I was so eager to blame my ambition and make myself the problem, make who I am fundamentally at my core the problem, because that's kind of like what society screams at us about. And when I really sat with it and really thought about it, it was not so much my ambition that was burning me out, but my codependency in overfunctioning patterns that was like really burning me out. It was beliefs that I had about myself, beliefs that I'm too much, my needs are too much. I can't ask for, if I'm going to ask for support, that I have to overcompensate as a way to receive the support. And bringing those beliefs into relational frameworks was actually the thing that was stressing me out and burning me out. And so I like to use this lab test to see what your hormones are doing, but also to uncover and understand some of the deeper things that are happening, not just biochemically, but also on a belief system level as well.
But the beliefs are biochemical. That's what's so great about this. I really love that you said that. We have a challenge that we put people through that's focused around teaching people how to care for themselves. And the final week's theme is about beliefs. And it's about examining beliefs that don't serve you and rewriting those beliefs. And I really love the fact that you're looking at this going, okay, my hormonal panel says I'm in a burnout state. But when I analyze it, it's not the asking for what I need or asking for what I want that's burning me out. It's the anxiety before I ask for what I need or after I ask for what I need or what I want that's causing the burnout. And if I can let go of that piece of it, that I'm maybe not deserving of those things, or I'm bothering people, or I'm putting too much of myself on other people, then all of a sudden you don't have as much wasted energy, wasted anxiety. Your hormones are improved because you're literally not as stressed out about the things that you're advocating for yourself. So I think that's just really beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that about your own experience, and I hope that people are listening and thinking to themselves like, whoa, this isn't just, like what I'm putting in my body and what I'm doing with my body. It's also about just how I think about myself and how I feel about myself that really matters when it comes to feeling good in my body again.
Yeah, and it's like perceived stress is real stress, right? So if in our minds we are running through worst case scenarios or we're in a hypervigilant state, that is setting brain down messages. Our HPA axis, our HPT axis, our HPG axis, it all starts at the level of the brain, the hypothalamus. So whatever message is going on in there, it's getting communicated to your entire endocrine system. And that's real. It's a really big deal.
That is a big deal. Well, before we go,
This is phenomenal.
if
I just
you-
want to say this
yeah,
has been great.
yeah, before we go, if you were talking to, a woman in your similar age category who is struggling with this, what message would you share with them right now to give them something to maybe feel hope for in order to start moving the direction of feeling better and finding a way to do so?
My go-to message is always your body has the capacity to heal, like Wolverine style. We have, our bodies are built and designed to heal themselves. We just have to understand the ways that we're potentially interrupting that process. That's the real work, but your body always knows how to heal itself. And that was the mantra that had to play on repeat after I was diagnosed with a really scary illness. I was like, my body knows how to heal. My body knows how to heal. So I always like to share that. The other thing that I will say is that perimenopause and menopause is talked about very negatively in our culture. Not all cultures view it that way. And there is a lot of different perspectives about this time. You could think about it as a portal or a threshold where you are stripping back the layers to reveal your true authentic self. And that is a gift. A lot of women say on the other side of it, they're like, I don't care as much about what other people think of me. It's like a reclaiming of self. And so that is something that, while I'm not there yet, I am definitely thinking about that. And because we know that our beliefs do inform our biology, I'm really, as I step my way into that endocrine transition, I want to go in with a more positive and hopeful mindset versus like, this is the beginning of the end.
Yeah, no, that is a very positive and beautiful way to frame it. And I think we see that as we age in general as women. It's like less fucks to give, less, worry about what everybody else is thinking and saying about us. I mean, that's the goal. I definitely know people, who don't get to fully experience that, but I am noticing it as I traverse through the 40s. It's like, you know what? I am who I am. I know myself more. I love myself more. I'm more curious about myself, and I'm less concerned with what other people think. So I think that's a beautiful way to look at these transitions into peri and to menopause. So thank you for that.
Erin, where can our listeners find more about you if they want to potentially learn more about your practice or what you do? Let them know.
So I am on Instagram a lot, like for better or for worse.
Same.
I'm the Funk'tional Nutritionist on Instagram. Functional is spelled with a K. I also have the Funk'tional Nutrition podcast, and our website is thefunctionalnutritionist.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, Erin, for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. It was a really great conversation.
Thank you both so much.